first, finally, someone with some balls and some gonads and some guts has said it. Someone that's totally qualified to say it as well. His name is Tim O'Connor, the highly regarded principal of Auckland Grammar. He has said what perhaps we've all been thinking for some time, or maybe he said it privately, or at least are thinking anyway, and that is that we're sick of this word resilience when it comes to our kids and teenagers. O'Connor says it is time that our kids toughened up a bit and turned up to class and stopped hiding behind all this talk about mental well-being. He says the buzzword resilience has become a cliche and students need to be taught to toughen up. This, of course, has come on the back of a Christchurch school, which will allow students to stay at home to study. Christchurch's Hagley College hopes to help students struggling with attendance due to extra activities like extracurricular activities or sickness or mental health concerns by giving 20 students the choice of part-time studying from home. This is a new trial there. This would involve them doing 3 days of in-person learning at school, including 16 hours of English, Maths and Science, and 2 days of learning through video calls at home. Oh, I can just see it now. At home for 20 hours. What will they really do? Auckland Grammar's Tim O'Connor has looked at this and he says, yeah, sure, every school is different and they can do what they like. But in his view, students need to show up to class in person 5 days a week. And our teens have become too fragile, he says. Turning up at the right place and the right time, being professional and learning how to socialise with peers were life lessons that everyone needed to learn. I'm with them. If anxious students stay at home all the time rather than being given the tools to cope, our nation's in for a sad future, says Tim O'Connor. Now, Tim O'Connor is he's old school, nothing wrong with that. And if you look at our academic success or lack of it over the last 20 years, you have to say something's not right. So maybe heading back to the classroom with a bit of old-fashioned approach might be good. I'll take your calls on this, 0800 3322 83, and we'll have Tim O'Connor join us very, very shortly. But he says, I'm over resilience, quote. I think resilience is now a cliche, and actually we need to be teaching them in the class. They need to be teaching them to be less fragile, he said. It does seem to me that society that we're living in is too readily accepting of every well-being measure possible. Why don't we just get back to basics, he says, and say, hey, no, you need to be present. You need to be doing these things. These things aren't up for negotiation. You just need to be at the right place at the right time. And I don't think you can replace the face-to-face contact, says O'Connor. And I think he's right. How much did they learn from home during COVID lockdown? How much did they really learn? He also said that childhood and teenage years were important times to teach about the personal reward that comes from being a contributing member of society, not someone locked in their room who's feeling anxious. I think he's right. We need to teach them how to actually cope with these feelings so they can get back into the mainstream society. Sure, there are some who will struggle, not all the models fit, but he says that basically the majority need to get back into the classroom and start doing the work. Come with them. Tim O'Connor is with us now, the headmaster of Auckland Grammar. Tim, g'day. Nice to have you on the program.
Duncan?
Nice to have you, Tim. You've good on you, mate. I'm really well, thank you. Not so well that we lost to Auckland Grammar recently at a rugby tournament, but we can cope. Been a Mount Albert Grammar boy. But you guys held yourselves well. Hey, your comments, of course, are stirring, and good on you too. Well, you've reacted quite strongly to this trial that's going on in Christchurch. What was the reason behind your comments?
Oh, look, I was just asked about a hybrid learning model, and to tell you the truth, it just conjured up COVID-19 all over again for me. And if we learned anything out of COVID, one of the things I think we should have learned is how important relationships are and how important face-to-face contact is. I think we're still dealing with now a generation coming through who have been impacted by actually being locked in their homes through COVID-19 and the like. And actually don't have some of the basic socialisation skills.
I think you're right, and I think there's it's a bit of a cop out too. It's too easy to tap out now. And I remember my days back at school, Westlake boys. Yep. There was no option. It was old school, and there's no shame in that, and there should be no shame in that now. And old school is a way of saying, well, this is actually what worked. We got reasonable grades. We had to turn up. Attendance actually mattered, and I think now there's too many ways that kids can tap out, and it's accepted.
Yeah, look, while we have locally governed schools, that's a great thing, and Hagley Community College can choose what's right for them, for sure. But I think we've actually lost an overall strategy for education in this country, a very simple strategy or a very simple vision. And I'm a believer in, there's an educational researcher called Gert Biester, he says there's three basic things that if we're going to have quality education, they rely on qualification, that is the transmission and acquisition of knowledge. And you can do that in a hybrid sense to a degree, but you miss out on the direct contact with specialist teachers. So qualification. The second is socialisation, that through education we actually initiate young people into traditions and ways of being. That's, how to actually shake someone's hand, standing up on a bus for someone, for the elderly, or for a member of the opposite sex, when to speak, when to listen, those sort of things. And the third area, he says, is subjectification, which is that education should actually impact positively on the student. That is, we want young people to be subjects of initiative and responsibility rather than actually the objects of the actions of others. And if you think now, in the society we live in, we have young people who are on their phones, if they could be 24/7. So they are the objects of actions of others. Social media, TikTok, YouTube. Why have we got Americanisation of language in this country amongst young people? Because they're actually the objects of the actions of others.
This I'm glad you brought up the phone, because that's got to be the greatest distraction that our kids face today. And I see it with my own boys and their friends. And some of these guys are doing, this won't surprise you, some of these guys do 40 hours a week. If you log their phones and ask them to be honest about it, and they press a couple of buttons, it shows 40 hours a week. That's a full-time job, Tim. 40 hours a week on your phone. Yeah. What are you doing?
Well, they're addicted to content, and it is so easy to and so they're not reading, they're not writing, they're not doing some of those basic things. And I guess it's that bit I went back to, Duncan, on we need to build in them anti-fragility. Forget resilience. It's a bygone word. And if we're actually producing a fragile generation, so we actually have to generate in them anti-fragility. And for us, that's simple things like saying you do turn up every day. There are 7 periods in the day. You will be at each of them. You will be in front of a teacher. Every term you will sit an examination at the end of the term. You will be streamed. And what happens out of that from we still call it third form, from year 9 through for the remaining 5 years of their education, they actually just become familiar with the basics of that they are accountable. They're accountable to turn up. They're accountable to learn content. They're going to be assessed regularly. They're going to receive their marks, and other people are going to see their marks too. And so they actually can progress. They can believe, rather than let's let everyone pretend they're passing. Let's not have a failure rate. In that model, we're fudging it for everyone rather than actually inspiring them an ability to learn.
So it starts with the system then, and I'm with you, because my young lads at Mount Albert Grammar and year 9, and we, from what I can see from our principal, Patrick Drum, the curriculum appears, the NCEA appears to be too easy, that our school's concerned about it, and they're creating their own curriculum as a result. Now, that's horrific to hear as a parent, that you're sending your kid somewhere where it's too easy, and everyone passes, and everyone must have fun, and no one must fail. That's what Patrick Drum said to me. This is their philosophy of NCEA. It's appalling.
Yeah, well, what we actually need, we all know that learning can be difficult, and learning should be difficult, because you're not learning, and people will say in an online environment, well, they'll learn, and we don't need teachers, we have people who facilitate learning. I'd say absolute rubbish to that. We actually need to be putting in front of students content that they wouldn't just trip over on a YouTube video or a TikTok video, that you actually need to understand there are specialists who have content that a young person might not think is relevant to them right now, but in 15 years' time it might actually click actually just how relevant what that was, and how those skills and how that content actually has aided them as a person.
Do you think that too many of them are hiding behind, we used to call it a sick day if we were able to get it past our parents, you'd have a sickie, but nowadays there's all sorts of mental challenges and anxiety and all sorts of labels are put on kids. And do you think that too many of them are, well, some of them will be relevant, but do you think too many of them are hiding behind this?
Well, I think look, there are young people, there are older people like you, Duncan, who need special help. I understand all of that, and we should be providing them with specialist help and guidance too. But I think it's very easy to actually make up an excuse that has to be accepted, because that's the way our society has gone. We're just a little bit soft in terms of the ready acceptance of an excuse. When someone genuinely needs help, they should have help. But when it's just for an excuse because I actually know I can, and there's a little wry smile that goes with it, and no one's going to question you, that doesn't do anyone any good.